Let's take this empty space above the living room fireplace and turn it into a built-in bathroom cabinet like this one. And let's do it all in Dave's old workshop. We're going to start with a piece of 3/4 inch cabinet grade plywood. And we're going to break out the poor man's track saw and start to saw it down. Once we're cut into more manageable pieces, we're going to go ahead and rip them to our finished size at the table saw. We'll do the sides, the top, and the bottom. It's nice to use that track saw setup to break things down into some more manageable pieces. That way I can handle them by myself safely on the table saw. And that's the key here, making sure that you do things safely, not get yourself in a jam, putting a piece of material on there bigger than you need to be handling. Then I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the dado stack so that I can make some rabbets after I get my sacrificial fence installed. And that'll allow the whole case to receive the back panel as well as the sides to receive the top and the bottom. That way everything's all rabbeted together, and that'll allow everything to fit together nicely. So that's what you see me doing here, adding the rabbets in the top and bottom, and then here along the side panels to receive that back piece of 1/4 inch plywood. And once I finish installing the rabbets, then I'm going to have to get myself set up to drill some shelf pin holes. And I kind of did that in a creative way. This is a way that probably not most people are going to do it. I made a wood tabletop for the top of my mill, and put a 1/4 inch end mill in there. Made a little setup here so that I can drill the shelf pin holes at exactly 1 inch increments. I'm going to show you the setup and how I did it, but I will fully acknowledge that this was a massive waste of time. I should have just made a jig of some sort that I could just feed a drill bit through that had a lip on it that allowed me to set the depth off the edge of the carcass. That way I was able to just drill them with a regular brad point bit drill and not spend all of this time going through the milling process, moving that table 1 inch at a time. But it did work. They ended up being absolutely flawless. And as you see, lots of sanding. I ended up sanding all of the pieces before I even began assembly so that everything was ready to take the stain and the finish very quickly. And I didn't have to spend a lot of time working inside corners and things like that during the sanding process. So now we're into some assembly here, and we're going to go ahead, and I've actually got this laid down on its side, and I'm putting in the bottom and now the top, and trying to get that all squared up. And this process is so fidgety, takes forever. Good thing Dave's got a stout work table here. I was able to stand up on top of that, support all 200 plus pounds of me, and get this thing assembled. Get this other side panel on here. Yeah, brush that glue in real good. Get that side piece up there. Slipped in those rabbets that we made before. And of course I don't have clamps that are long enough, so I have to kind of improvise here to make sure that everything's held together tightly and squarely. And you have to do that at the bottom as well. Measure diagonally to make sure that you got the same dimension for square. And as long as you can trust your tape measure, you're in good shape. Then I went ahead and applied just a little bit of glue in different places. I know that probably some people are going to give me some grief for that, for this back panel. And then I ended up setting that in there, clamping the whole case to make sure that everything was good and square, tapped it down into the joint, and added some brad nails all the way around this thing to make sure that that's not going to go anywhere. And fortunately, I was able to even find myself in a position to where I didn't shoot any brads into a position that you that you could see them or through the side of the cabinet or anything. So with that all assembled, now it's time to start working on the doors. So I ripped these pieces of maple 1x4 down, saving that 1/4 inch strip that I ended up sawing off the edge. And we're going to use that again later, and I'll show you what for. But I had sawed down all the rails and the stiles. And unfortunately, I did not have my miter saw in the shop, so I had to make the cross cuts on the table saw as well. And that was a little bit annoying. Then I sawed down the 1/4 inch material that's going to make up the panel for the center of the door. And I kind of dry fit everything together, make sure that it was going to work, and then started to glue and assemble it together. Now, here's your spoiler. I ended up just making some simple tongue and grooves on this door and just made a simple rectangle here, which looked fine in the end. But the problem was when I got it all assembled and glued together, I realized that I had mismeasured. And the entire thing is way, way too big for this cabinet. That one single door that I made is more than half the width of the cabinet. So I actually had to saw it apart. I know, really disappointing, really made me irritated. But I was able to salvage the material because definitely not going to throw it away, right? So I had to end up cutting everything back apart, cutting the stiles off, and then cutting the rails off so that I could reuse that material to make a little bit smaller door. Obviously, the center panels weren't able to be salvaged, but that's just the price of stupidity sometimes. You got to learn to read your tape measure. You got to read it correctly. Basically, I'd made the door for an overlaid style door rather than an inset cabinet door, and learned my lesson on that one in a big way, because I had to cut that stuff back down. But like I said, was able to salvage the rails and the stiles, and was able to find a door maker's cabinet bit set in Dave's old toolbox. And so I brought that over to the router table and actually started doing that the cope and stick style of that particular door maker set. And so I cut all the end grain on the rails first. That way, if there was any tear out, the next router bit would go ahead and take care of that chip out on this particular side. So then I had to go ahead and change to the other style bit and make the groove to receive the panel, as well as the tongue on these pieces that I had just made. And see Dave's old homemade router table here. Works pretty well. Once I realigned the bearing, I went ahead and ran the stiles through the router table to make sure that everything was going to fit together just so nice and snugly. And you can see here just how those two pieces fit together. It worked out really well, perfectly flush. Really happy with how that turned out. So then I went ahead and dry fit this door, and yeah, it went a whole lot better. Then I had to cut all the pieces for the second door. I went ahead and sanded everything by hand at first, and then went ahead and used the random orbit sander to get everything cleaned up, and then started to glue it all together. And this actually fit really well. I was pretty pleased with how this whole process went, especially for this door at one time being sawn apart. But we got it all fit up and in the clamps and let that cook for a little while. And while that glue was drying, I went ahead and sanded for the final time the inside of the actual cabinet case, and then I was able to start applying some stain and some finish. And while that dried, I was able to get the door out, finish sand it, and I left a little bit of extra material on the width so that I could saw them to the exact size that I wanted to. So with the door fully assembled, I was able to run it back through the table saw to its final width. And then I was able to apply the stain for it. This is my own personal blend of stain, not like the Adam White series or anything like that. Just I had used some off-the-shelf stain and kind of mixed them together to get the color preference that my wife liked. And what do you know, she still didn't end up liking it when it was all said and done. But hey, I tried my best. So we got all that mixed together and spread out across these doors on both sides. I'm not going to bore you with the both sides. You kind of get the idea here, seeing it transform. Now we need to go ahead and cut the actual shelves for the cabinet. So back to the poor man's track saw and get us a piece cut that will accommodate both shelves, and then trim the ends and take it over the table saw and split it down the middle, and then we can get our finished size out of both of these shelves here. Now remember that piece of 1/4 inch that I told you about before that we ripped off the actual door pieces? Well, this is what we're going to use it for. We're going to edge band our shelves with it. Why? Well, because I'm a cheapskate. So I went ahead and added the glue and clamped that thing up. Didn't use any kind of fastener or anything, just let it glue together like that. And then I went ahead and cut the pieces for the trim. Same deal. Look at that new edge banding being created right there. We're definitely going to save that for a future project. But this is the trim that we're sawing down right now that's going to go around the face of the cabinet, between the cabinet and the wall, being that it's a built-in. And I went ahead and cut the 45s on there. Now, if you're saying to yourself, hello, you don't know for sure that those are going to be 45-degree corners. Yeah, I do, because I built the cabinet to be square. So if it's a 90-degree corner, that means that you're going to need 45-degree miters, right? In a normal trim-out situation, you would want to measure the actual angle to figure out how that was going to be applied. But in this case, I know that the cabinet is going to be 90 degrees and square, so I was able to cut a 45 immediately. A little more sanding, and then applying the finish here to the shelves and to the trim pieces as well. After the conclusion of this project, I did end up going out and buying myself a spray gun so that I can apply some of this stain, especially this simple Danish oil that's going on like the maple cabinetry. I'm going to apply that with a spray gun in the future. Unfortunately, pre-finished plywood is just too expensive for this cheapskate to be buying, so I'm going to still have to finish my own no matter what, and that's going to require speeding up that process a little bit, so I think a spray gun is going to be the answer there. You can kind of see me mixing up my own special blend here for that custom color stain that's going to go around the actual maple hardwood material that's going to be both on the doors and the trim around it. I won't bore you with the entire process here of getting that 2 coats of stain on all sides and everything like that, but this is the gist of it. Then we're going to go ahead and drill some pocket holes in these 2 of the pieces. That's going to be the trim around the cabinet, and that'll allow me to lock it all together. I'd never drilled a pocket hole on a 45-degree angle like this, but as long as you're paying attention, it actually works out pretty good. And it fastened them pretty tight, allowed the alignment to be good and all that stuff, so I was pretty pleased with how that all turned out. Probably could have cut the miters on after the finish process because it required a little bit of sand and fit after, you kind of run a little stain over the edges and stuff like that. So if I had that to do over again, I probably would have saved the cutting of the 45-degree angle after the stain was dry and everything, and the finish was on it and all that. But once we got all the holes drilled, then I was able to just screw them together after I had them clamped down. Got to get a couple of them together first and then spin it around to the other side and get them lined back up, and then you're able to actually break out the square and make sure that you got a true 90-degree angle right there. And then you just drive them screws home. And once you got her fastened down, this is what you end up with. Now it's time for some installation. Go ahead and slide the case into the wall. Got the shelves in it. Go ahead and slide that face frame up there. What do you know, kid? Perfect fit. That's what you're looking for. A couple pre-drilled holes that I slipped some finish nails in and just kind of got it tacked up there in place, and then kind of fussed around with it with a square to make sure everything was lined up real good. Got the doors on. This was kind of the part of the project that I was over it, and I didn't film every detailed step of the way, so I didn't actually show drilling out the hinges and all that to put the doors up. But hey, I was able to show you this nice little tape technique where I was able to mark on the tape rather than on the wood itself and get my holes drilled for the hinge handles, or not the hinge handles, just the actual door handles. Leaves a nice clean hole if you do it that way. And then just add the hardware. My wife picked out these black hinges and then put them back and then picked them out again, so that was nice. Nice little Home Depot trip right there. A little left and right. I like the contrast of these 2 wood colors as well. And that's pretty much it. It's in the wall, the trim's on, the doors are on. It does need a little bit of final adjustment on the doors to make sure that my gap settings are right all the way around, but she's ready to be loaded up with all kinds of stuff. I give it one last little wipe down here, make sure everything closes properly. There is no stop for the cabinet doors. I just left the shelves long enough that the doors could close against it. I don't know how that's going to be in the long term, but that's how I ended up doing it. Perfect. As always, thanks for watching Dave's Old Workshop. Hey, if you got something intelligent to say, leave it in a comment. If you like what you saw, like the video. And if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button.